All right, let me tell you my favorite Vader story. It's not from this shoot. This was the second time we worked with Vader. The first time was in a series called Timeline that we launched, where we set up the ringside table, and me and my guest would sit in front of our prop, colorful foam microphones and watch the monitor. The back of the monitor is what you saw. We were watching a match, and the talent would go through their career, and we would talk about those benchmark matches. Imagine Next Evolution, but you couldn't see the fucking matches. I don't know, maybe it was ill-conceived. But Vader came in, and the first funny Vader story was he sat with me, and I wanted it to be, I didn't want to do some big intro. I wanted to jump like right into the matches, kind of like when you turned on MSG Network and Gorilla and Al Hayes were sitting at the ringside table and say, "Hello, wrestling fans, we have all these matches today. Let's get right up into the ring for our first match." And then me and Vader would start to cover that first match. So I did that, and he stops the take, and he says, "Whoa, whoa, 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 whoa! I'm a little thrown here. I was expecting like a nice to have you, and then I could say, oh, it's great. I've been looking forward to this, and I want to go through these matches. Like we should do an introduction. You know, I was expecting an introduction where you welcome me here." I said, "Okay, fine, Vader, let's do a second take." And we did. And I said, and here, and to join us today is Leon White, Vader himself. Vader, thank you so much for joining us. And he went, "My pleasure, my man," and looked down at the monitor. True story. About a half hour through into this, he says he's got to stand. He had a very bad back at the time, and he did some stretching and had to, you know, he's a huge guy, and maybe it was more like an hour and a half into it. And we began talking about the 5-hour energy, which was new to our lives at the time. It was a little shot that you gave yourself of caffeine and who knows what else to wake you up. And he said, really, my body's breaking down. He said, I have one in my room. Let me go get that 5-hour. Now, he was a disciple of this shit. Okay. He was telling us about, we're like, all right, go ahead, go get it. He runs down the hall. He pops it. He comes in. You can find the edit point, because one of these matches, when I begin the match, I go, okay, we're in the ring now with Vader and Mick Foley, whoever it was. He's like, my man, Sean Oliver, we're ringside. Oh, he just had the 5-hour energy. So he's ready to plow through these last 5 matches. By the end of this match, I think he drank 5-minute energy, because he turned to me after the match and went, "I'm falling asleep again, man." So it wasn't a great advertisement for his new product, the 5-hour energy gimmick, but it was great on the set. If anyone read the book, you know, he gave us a few words, a few terms, which we put into our lexicon. Liquid fluid. He was talking about a mattress that he was enjoying, and it had some. I said, "So what's it? It's a liquid." He goes, "What's wrong with like a liquid fluid?" Absolutely fine. And there was one other one that I forgot, but liquid fluid was used by the crew for. Oh no, it wasn't about a mattress, but I'm dreaming about Leon White in a waterbed. Apparently, it was what created the steam in the mask. I was asking him what went in the compartment to generate the steam that would shoot out of the Vader mask when he came to the ring. And that's when he said it was a liquid fluid.
Over in the WWF at the time, Bobby Heenan's going on and on about a guy named Narcissus that is coming. There's a clown running around, an actual clown. Primetime wrestling's being replaced by some new show called Monday Night Raw or something. It'll never last.
Yeah.
Ric Flair was challenging Bret Hart for the WWF title across the U.S., but in the WCW. Our guest today had just gained the WCW heavyweight title in December of 1992 from Ron Simmons, and is about to do a very dominant year with that title in WCW.
Now I'm gonna put you on the spot right away. Which title reign was that of mine in '93?
Number 2.
Number 2.
Yes.
Wow, you sure?
Yes.
Okay. You know.
Because my note says regained.
It
says regained.
Right off the bat, just flip the script on it.
It's time. It's time. Is it Leon White time or Vader time?
It's definitely Vader time right now. I thought the WCW world title, and obviously you cannot take anything away from the WWE and what it had done to that point, and certainly what it's done from that point.
Mm-hmm.
But I thought it was the #1 title in America. Sting, myself, and Ron Simmons were three pretty representative athletes going for the title. But that's just my opinion. I mean, obviously there's some strong world titles over, I thought, in Japan.
Right.
Of course, New Japan and Baba's and etc. But I thought it was the #1 title in the world at that point.
What did it mean to be the WCW champion as far as travel, as far as any additional engagements, signings, appearances? Bigger burden?
Not in as much as I would think the title, like having been the world champion in Japan several times, that responsibility was much greater. In other words, what you had to do in terms of showing up early and signing autographs and that responsibility, but your responsibility to the press in Japan. You would ride in separate cars and go to studios and do things that the other people, the other individuals on the crew just didn't have to do. But this one, yeah, there were some requirements by this champion, if you were that guy.
When you're told you're getting the title, which would have been, I think it was December, right, of '92. It was just a couple of weeks before we start the year. How long out do they tell you you're going to hold it? Was it always the plan to have it for 1 year?
See, I really never had those conversations. And Dusty Rhodes, who is a friend of mine, and I think quite a bit about, he was an individual that pretty much gave me free rein, and we didn't discuss those type of things because I think what I'm trying to say is I pretty much would either agree with that schedule or not, and they would have to work around what I felt I was going to do.
So they didn't give you a projection? They
No.
didn't. Okay.
Yeah.
Now Harley Race is your manager here. Talk about his role on camera, off camera.
Well, Harley, during this period of time, and I were very, very good friends. You get to know someone pretty well when you ride, you ride up and down the road with them, and it seemed like we'd always end up in one of those. The car of choice for professional wrestlers.
Can I guess?
It was, yeah.
Lincoln Town Car?
No, it was a Cadillac North Star with that North Star engine.
Okay.
Had a very, very powerful engine, probably do 100, without the governor, 160, 170 mile an hour. And Harley always drove. That was his thing. He was the driver. And he would, press the gas down to the floor. And the governor would, in other words, you're going 80, 90, and that governor would hit in probably about 115. And you're talking about the roads down south, which were 4 and 5 and 6 lanes wide. And he would... he wouldn't just approach that governor, he would smack it. So it just, and finally he would just bust through it about the 3rd or 4th time. The governor he'd go right through it. And he'd kind of, and then we were off. And we were places and times, and we set records. And of course, having a beer in one hand and a cigarette in the other. And my job was simply not to let him run out of either beer or a cigarette.
The gimmick with him was always the hand would just be out,
yeah.
and you just kept him going, right? You kept him handed.
Very unique individual. Very, the thing that impressed me about Harley was, I'm the world champion, and of course he was my teacher, my mentor. He wanted me to do well because that was an obvious connection. But in front of the guys, he would rarely, if ever, what's the word? Instruct me. But we'd get alone down the road, and you remember that spot, and he'd get into it. You remember this situation at this moment, and he would get into it that way. Why did you do that rather than do something like this? And basically,
but not in front of the boys.
Oh, never.
That was
never,
great. That's
never. Yeah.
classy.
Yeah, a lot of A lot of respect for that.
What about Ron? Let's talk about Ron Simmons. He's the one you took it from. You worked with him a fair amount. What's it like working with Ron Simmons? Another football guy.
Well, you know, Ron was very explosive and, you know, could move. See, the purest definition of you know, strength is one thing, and strength is really kind of it's not really important. Your ability to basically extend your elbow or lift a bunch of weight doesn't matter. I mean, there's been a lot of strong guys like Scott Norton. I mean, he was extremely strong, right? 700-pound bench presser, and Mark Henry's very strong. But Mike Tyson is more powerful than Mark Henry. So, to answer your question, and really coming around the corner on this one, Ron Simmons was more powerful than say a Mark Henry, or because of his ability to move from point A to B and deliver a blow, his explosiveness.
Cactus as a baby face or a heel? Which was better?
You know what? I don't think it matters. And you know what? I don't think it mattered with me. You know, I couldn't sit here if you asked me to list the things I did different as a babyface versus a heel, and it would be zero. It's nothing. And I think Mick, Cactus Jack, whatever you wanted to call him, Dude Love or whatever, would fall into that category. And by the way, you know, his DVD's out, and he's a friend of mine. And I narrated on it, and they really gave the feud between Vader and Cactus Jack. I mean, in my opinion, it was the segment on the DVD, longer than, you know, longer than Undertaker's segment with Cactus Jack, and again, for me to be on it and narrate it and help Mick out like that, you know, Mick is just a great guy, and I enjoy being around him.
Stylistically, talk about working with a Mick Foley.
Well, again, this, in my opinion, Mick is kind of like a wrestling savant. I mean, obviously he's an intelligent man, and everyone's figuring that out. If he is 99.9999999% of the time always the smartest guy in the ring, and certainly probably in the building as well. But he's what he lacks, you know, he's not the biggest guy in the ring, he's not the strongest guy in the ring, not the quickest, but he makes up for it in creativity, and he's able to see the picture and then have the courage to go ahead and actually carry it out.
Nothing Paul would do, right?
No comment. I don't.
No
really
comment is the comment sometimes.
I don't know Paul that well. I really don't.
Was he well liked with his tenure in WCW by the guys?
I know the only thing I could say about Paul was that when I left the WCW, he was on the phone and he had big plans for Vader coming to ECW, and I was intrigued. I mean, I was intrigued. He is a good salesman, and he had me sold on, you know, the monster he could have created and what he could have done, and obviously very talented individual. I don't know if you like him or if you dislike him, but the bottom line is I think he was good for professional wrestling and was very talented at what he did.
Let's shift it to Bill Watts. Talk about working for Bill Watts as a boss.
Oh, Bill, you know what? A big man, got 6'4", legit, and had a company of his own that he ran. Very good friend of mine, Dr. Death, worked for him for a long time. And I guess it was the traveling, and they would just drive. And
Louisiana was brutal, yeah.
Just drive, yeah. And I'm really glad I got to miss out on all that. But
when he came up to WCW, you sometimes hear they're like ruling with an iron fist, kind of.
You know what? To me, and again, that was, you know, my peak, my heyday. And, you know, my peak, my heyday, I'm legit. I mean, we're not talking about exaggeration, 427 pounds. I could legitimately bench press 640, and I could take 365 pounds behind my neck. And you know what a jump press is. It's not a strict press, but I could take 365 and jump press it 15 times. So, and he saw me doing that in the gym, and it was unique the way he treated me after he saw that. He walked in the gym like, "Hey, Vader," and he was like, "I need to talk to you." And I said, you know, I looked over and I said, "Yeah, you're gonna wait a minute because I'm gonna finish the set, you know." And by the way, I don't like my workout being interrupted anyway. So, and I did it 15 times, and yeah, it was just this, I don't know, just change.
Attitude change?
Yeah. It was kind of fun. So, but I never had a problem with him. He had asked me to come down to come down and live in the area and stuff like that, and I told him that I had a nice big home in Colorado and that I wouldn't be doing that, but I never had a problem with Bill.
Did you see him be demeaning in any way to any other boys that weren't doing the jump press 15 times, maybe?
You know, I think being the boss at ECW and doing things his way.
WCW, yeah.
No, not his company.
UWF.
UWF, okay, I'm sorry. Probably carried over, and where there were times that you certainly may have got that impression where it was, things were, you know, his way and being done his way.
Okay.
That iron fist, rule with an iron fist.
Yes.
Yeah.
First take Bill Apter. Bill's a staple of the business. I think one of the most valuable resources in the business. Was he seen as such then? He was an outside entity, Pro Wrestling Illustrated, you know.
First of all, very nice man. Always very polite, gentleman, intelligent. Could write. You know, as a writer, I think you have to give him his due. But I saw him as somebody that I think was important to our business. He provided a lot of, I guess you'd call it inside knowledge, and the ability to keep that serious fan involved above and beyond what the average fan would. So yeah, I liked Bill, and I liked his role and what he did in wrestling.
The other magazines.
And then can I ask you something? Has that diminished now? I mean, is that
Bill's importance, you mean?
Well, I meant not just Bill's, but that role, that guy in our business, is it?
Well, in my humble opinion, which no one's going to give a shit about, once the curtain was drawn back and everything was exposed, and it's exposed not in next month's magazine, but 30 seconds after it happens on Twitter and Facebook and in the Observer and all the sheets and stuff.
I see what you're going.
Once that was drawn back, I think what it did was it robbed old school fans, I'll put myself in that category, of the thirst to know things, the want to know. I don't want to know anything more because I know it all the second it happens.
Yeah.
So yes, I mean, I think it changed from that standpoint. The mystery's gone.
Yeah.
You know, it's you see the lover naked on the first date now. Why do you go back? She's fine. Let's move on. When you're the booker's kid, you're going to take heat, right?
Sure. Absolutely.
Did you feel any of that heat was warranted or not with Eric?
Again, the way Eric treated me was very respectful. Pretty much a gentleman. I think his dad brought him up right in that way. I felt sorry for him because he was a big, strong kid, tall like his father, the legitimate 6'5". There's a lot of 6'5" wrestlers, but you know, to be legitimately 6'5" is another thing. But I just the fact that he was the son of the booker and a very dominant booker at that, but just he just didn't really have whatever it is, you know. I don't think. I mean, I think he would have been a great middle of the card guy.
Middle of the card.
Yeah, I just don't think. I didn't see it. I mean, you can tell, like, you look at a Sting and you go, wow. I mean, that there's talent there, or a Muta, or a Shawn Michaels, and then those are some pretty extreme examples of talent, obviously. But you look and they do certain things that other people don't do.
Similar situation, or a class above Eric, maybe?
Oh, by far, yeah. Dustin is legitimate, my opinion. You know, his character, the Goldust character, was pretty much conceived by him. I'm sure his father had a hand in it, but Dustin's talented. I mean, one of the first matches I had with him was as a young cowboy, you know, coming in as Dustin Rhodes, and no, he could wrestle, and there was.
And it was evident this far back from when he was first wrestling.
From day one, and it didn't matter whose son he was. I mean, that had nothing to do with it. Just you either are, you know, you have that certain edge or you don't, and he had it definitely.
January 30th on WCW Saturday Night. Here is the White Castle of Fear mini movie, which this is Sting takes a helicopter to your secret mountain lair in order to accept the challenge for the upcoming Super Brawl pay-per-view. Remember shooting this madness?
Yeah. A lot of pretty girls on set. Had that little short guy.
Cheatham the Midget.
Yeah,
was the gimmick.
I couldn't think of his name, but was a friend of mine, and
who proposes this? This can't be a Bill Watts idea. This seems very un-wrestling, un-Bill Watts.
You know, I don't know. I have to claim ignorance on that. I don't know. But looking back at it, it's people remember it, and so. Yeah, I liked it. Yeah.
Were you guys doing it tongue-in-cheek, or did you really think this would be an effective promo for the pay-per-view?
For me, I kind of thought the White Castle of Fear was secondary. You know, for me, the strap and that whole tug of war and bringing Sting onto the fire and first of all, as far as strap matches go, they're very, very hard to do well, extremely hard to do well, and usually they die usually a very slow death. And we not only had a good match, but I thought it was an exceptional match. And I remember toward the end there, and I don't even know if this has ever been brought out, but there was a blade involved, and it was taped in Steve's hand, in his fingers, and he was using it to cut himself, and he had forgot it was there, and was at the end of the match, and actually after I'd won, and sliced up my eardrum to the point where it bled, and I literally couldn't get off the mat.
Yeah, we're going to cover that match.
Oh, so you did know that?
Oh yeah, the
I thought that.
Fear.
So there's nothing that gets by you guys. You guys
Nothing gets by this.
Okay.
Copious research. Do you remember Taz at all before he became Taz?
Briefly, yeah. I mean, he short, powerful, dark skin. Again, had some explosiveness to him, and I could certainly see why he got the notoriety that he got. But was limited in ways, and other ways was exceptional. So.
Not specific to Taz, but a guy getting a tryout. What was the process back then? 93 is probably before the power plant, right? So how does a guy get a job in WCW?
Well, probably at that time, it was a pretty tough situation. If you looked at that talent roster, I mean, you go back a few years to the AWA talent roster with Vern Gagne and you know Marty and Sean, right, and then Kurt Hennig and Scott Hall, the Road Warriors, Jerry Blackwell, Bruiser Brody, Stan Hansen, the Freebirds,
Bockwinkel,
myself, Nick Bockwinkel. Sure. Think about that talent roster, and then think about professional wrestling and Rick Rude, and I mean that was one of the, if not the most talented roster probably ever. In other words, you were catching people at different. Jerry was getting old, Nick was starting to get old, and then you had a young Kurt Hennig and a very young Shawn Michaels and young Scott Hall, an extremely inexperienced.
But if you're
Vader.
lucky enough to get a tryout,
but
who was evaluating you? Specific to WCW. It's Bill Watts, I would assume, watching. Does he ask the guys what you think? Is he standing next to you and says, Leon, what do you think of this guy?
So you're saying the promoter is asking me about like a Taz?
Would that happen? Like if Taz is in the ring, would the brass at WCW solicit
sure.
other workers' advice?
Sure. What do you think? In other words, he would take a known commodity that was established in that. Sure, I think that would be something that definitely they would do. I would do it if we were.
What would you be looking for as Leon White in 1993 if Bill Watts said to you, "What do you think of this guy?"
The ability to negotiate the match before the match starts, because most of the individuals, they don't have that ability to look people in the eye and say no. In other words, the match is really created in the locker room, and if you don't compete during that period of time, it's over before it starts. If he says, this is we're going to do this, and then we're going to do this, and we're going to do this, and you just go, yeah, sounds good. Well,
but as a new guy, shouldn't I do that?
Well, not if you want to be around.
Not if I want to live.
Not if you want to
make a living.
Be around and collect a paycheck. You have to find a way to change that without
offending.
Just saying no.
Okay.
Yeah, and so that takes. If you're a young Leon White and you're wrestling Frank Bruiser Brody, who was what, a 6'7" Charles Manson. How do you do that?
You tell me.
That's what I'm telling you. Very carefully. Very carefully. I'd tell you a story the night my son, a.k.a. Jake Carter, was born. I'd had a few drinks, and my wife was in birth for, 44 hours? Oh. And I had been on the loop wrestling Frank, and Frank was, in just one of his moods. And a boy came down, and I had beer in my breath, and and I'm physically, I'm 395 pounds and was extremely strong. If it got right down to physically, not necessarily fighting, but who was the bigger, stronger, younger, and better conditioned athlete, was me. I'm not saying anything about the ability to win a fight, because I guess Frank was known for his toughness as a fighter, right? That was part
what you
of,
hear.
Yeah, that's neither here or there, but certainly as an athlete who spent more time in the gym at that period of time, it would probably would have been me who could lift more weights, more reps, and who could ride a bike farther and stuff like that. But I remember I came down with the intent not to get beat up on the night that my son was born, and and told him that, and looked him in the eye and told him that, and we didn't even walk up that night. He just walked over and kicked me right in the face and split my mouth open. So, best intention, son or no son. That's the way it went that night. So.
That's an interesting negotiation technique. Just kick you in the face.
Well, that's exactly, that's the ability to negotiate that.
Right.
and that will determine if you're going to be around long enough to figure out if you are any good or not.
In hindsight, was Bill Watts' tenure with WCW a good one?
Wow, this is really hard. Ron Simmons is a Hall of Famer, is the first black champion ever, and you know, I had a part in that because you know, Dusty said, "Well, you know, what do you think?" And you know, I told him I'd let him know if I would do it or not. It wasn't something that I had to do. I mean, there was no. In other words, I had the ability at that time. I could have made a move to the WWE pretty quickly at that point. You know, if you consider, you know, who I was in the business, and physically I was at the top of my game, and certainly could have went back to Japan and probably set records in terms of. I mean, there were stories about what Andre and what Stan and Bruiser had made on a weekly basis, you know, cash money type thing.
Did you come close?
Yeah, I came very close, but so I had options. Wasn't told, well, you have to do this or you're going to get fired. It just didn't happen that way.
So for you, the Bill Watts years, you had control. You didn't. It was probably no different than if anyone else was there, because you were allowed to do and say, agree to what you wanted to agree to.
For me, it was, you know, it was a little bit different, I think, than the average individual being there. So.
Is it something you're concerned about in any way? Will it be good? Will it be bad? Or are you just not even thinking about it?
No, I mean, Ole certainly was more confrontational than Bill, and I remember and for the record, you know, God, I saw something on the WWE that they were going through moves, or it was just something on that premium channel that the WWE has, and it, you know, all of a sudden it top 50 something, and it had Bam Bam as the first 400-pounder to throw a moonsault, and that, you know, just the Vader moonsault against Davey Boy and Sting at that pay-per-view with Sid was the first one.
Yeah, well, that's this year, actually.
Yeah, and the first legitimate 400-pound man to ever throw a moonsault. And by the way, mine was a legitimate moonsault. And you know, Bam Bam's not here to defend himself, so and Bam Bam we were tag team champions over in Japan, so we you know, we knew each other pretty well. So I'm not talking out of school. I wouldn't do that. But he did it about 3 weeks later on Monday Night Raw. So just for the record, I was the first 400-pound. You know, that was me. I did it. So the fact that I did do it first, it's important. And then, you know what? And then Bam Bam did it, and then it seemed like everybody that was close to 400, 350, 360 were just doing moonsaults, just kind of like half twist off the top rope, just kind of like throw their shoulder, and well, that was a moonsault. So,
take me back to Ole for a minute. More confrontational, you said.
Yeah. In other words, he was, for example, that moonsault. He didn't want me to do it, and I said, "Wait a minute, you don't want me to do something in the ring? You're questioning, you know, what I want to do in the ring." And I'd never been approached like that. And he said, "Yeah, you're 400 pounds. You don't need to be flying around like Peter Pan." And so Ole, you know, actually told me no. And being that individual who I was at that time. And you know, I'm very proud and happy to say that, you know, that person no longer exists. That Leon White, that Big Van Vader. I mean, that guy used to drink. He used to do a lot of things. You like, well, I can't really say that, but like a lot of us did. Not all of us, but a lot of us did in that era.
Was some lifestyle decisions on the road?
Yeah, sure. And
but so what does he say to Ole, that old Leon like that doesn't exist?
you know, not much. It was pretty short. Couple words.
Couple words?
A couple words, and
Involve one of these fingers?
and just left. And so yeah, we didn't get along. And
Okay.
And that's where I'm gonna leave it. But I didn't understand the input or why waste the effort, because I mean, why wouldn't you want that as part of your show? I mean, because I had proven to do, you know, pretty. Well, you know, I want to say spectacular, unusual moves.
Did he feel
as
you
a big
couldn't
guy.
pull it off, or was he afraid you'd
No,
kill
it
Davey?
wasn't. I think he was afraid I was going to pull it off, because I think he had saw me do it in practice. I mean, it was not just could I pull it off, but I pulled it off perfectly. And again, for reasons you'd have to ask him, it just he didn't want me to do it. So.
Significant here also, though, is Eric Bischoff's ascension from being a B-team announcer to the executive producer of all WCW television. Is there a moment of like, wait, who's this? What do you, who, what? Or did you expect this because you saw such talent, raw talent in him, maybe?
Well, then, no doubt, Eric's a smart guy, you know, and he looked good. I mean, he had the jet black hair, and he you know, initially, I you know, and I really don't have any hard feelings. I mean, that's not who I am today.
But then
he could talk, and he just didn't know a whole lot about wrestling at that particular time, and he rapidly evolved. I mean, to do what he did in the what I was going to call it the NWO, but in the new WCW was pretty exceptional for a long time.
he was fired for the wellness violation, the human growth hormone and whatnot. Comes to WCW right away. Is this something that he'd be able to hide from WCW, or would he not be as vigorously tested? But to leave one federation because of that and so quickly land in another, was it in some way more performance enhancement friendly in WCW? I guess is where I'm going with that.
You know what, buddy? That's such a good question, and obviously it puts me dead on the spot. But what, you know, the rules that we had in the WCW and the rules that they had in the WWE were pretty much precisely the same, right? I mean,
they were, and we're actually going to talk about this in depth when there's
based on federal law and et cetera. Pretty much.
I think the big difference was the perception was in WCW, you had a few days' notice before someone was coming to take your pee, whereas I think they were spot checks in WWE.
God, you know what? I remember having less of a problem in that area. See, the thing with me is everything that during that period and everything that I put in my body was legal, and so I never had a problem. In other words, my doctor said, you know, that legally, and this wasn't some found paid doctor and from some little small town that needed money. This was a doctor that I had in my family. He was my son's doctor and my wife's doctor.
Is a prescription steroid the same as one that I would get, I'm going to say black market, but that's probably not the right term, from maybe a different source? Is it chemically the exact same thing? Or safer maybe?
You're talking about it, and probably not. I mean, you know, they're supposed to do precisely the same thing, but not the same thing. In other words, you're regulated of what can go in there and how much, and its ability to do certain things. And
Do you remember what the ones at this time were that we were seeing around? Was it Deca? There was some that were water-based, some that were oil-based. Better, worse for your body. Did you know any of the science behind it?
I never was, at birth, I was born at 7 months and 2 weeks, so I was a preemie baby, and I was 10 pounds, 18 ounces. So I've always been this this big guy.
No doubt.
But didn't really know anything about what you're talking about in terms of, there was oil-based or water-based, or there was this or that or this or that. It's just, I use certain things that created the body's natural ability. In other words, when you artificially inseminate something in your body that your body makes naturally, your body quits producing it. So I never used those types of things. I would use something that would help create my body make more of what it does naturally. And so in other words, for me to say I never used anything illegal, and everything I put in my body came with prescription that was
From
legal.
a doctor. Okay.
And you know what? So I never had a problem. In other words, someone said, well, what are you taking? I'd write it down and by the name and hand it to them and be proud to do it, because it was legitimately legal, and it wasn't artificially inseminated. It would stimulate
A natural
what my body
process.
did naturally.
Right.
And I always thought that was the way to go. And you never, people would put stuff in their bodies, and it would, your body would quit producing it.
Like
So
testosterone and whatnot.
whatever they were using, and my God, you'd fall off the cliff. In other words, all of a sudden your body can't produce it. You run out of it, and you can really get in trouble. So
Absolutely.
and you have to admit, if me with my shirt off during that time, man, I looked big and strong, but I never looked like a.
Yes,
Well, I never looked like, Arnold Schwarzenegger.
like Davey.
I don't care how tan I got. I just didn't look like that guy.
Doesn't this diminish what you're holding a little bit, that they're running around with two belts?
Probably did, didn't it? I didn't think of it that way at the time, but sure, yeah. I think a gentleman by the name of Ric Flair was running things at that time, if I'm right.
This is right. Rick comes back from WWF now, and there's a no-compete clause, so he's not allowed to work in the ring. But what we're going to see happen is Rick's going to be on TV a lot. So he has just come back from WWF at this time.
Yeah. There was a lot of things done during that period of time. Since that time, Rick has just recently lost his son.
Yes.
And I got to see his son just before he went over to Japan, and actually spent time with him. I was in Rhode Island working for a gentleman by the name of Mike Antoninoci, just a local promoter there, and I guess Rick's son had been working for him on a regular basis, and we got to sit down together. And I didn't know who he was at first, but I found myself sitting down with Rick's son, and had talked to him for 20 minutes, not knowing who he was. I mean, not knowing, and was trying to, I'm going over and I'm getting this opportunity with, I believe it was All Japan and Muda, and he kept saying, and my dad's going over too, and I would ignore that, didn't really care who his dad was, didn't know, didn't care, and I was, trying to tell him that he was going to be tested physically, the squats and the push-ups and those drills. My God, to date, if I would have had to do those drills, I never would have made it in wrestling.
As part of the process to try out for
As
Japan.
part of the process of becoming a wrestler in Japan. In other words, to earn the right to get in the ring in Japan, you have to, you got to do stuff that's just incredible, incredibly hard. I in my prime, in my best day, I couldn't have done it. So I was trying to tell him at his weight he was going to be tested, and to please not just be, don't get in the gym and work out for strength and size and bodybuilding, work out for that. And it was about the half hour into it, and so it became aware to me that I was talking to Ric Flair's son, and not that changed it, but it was like, well, maybe he knows more. I mean, he grew up with this. Maybe I could take this to the next level and try to help him a little differently. Go from conditioning to in other words, there's a way to call a spot in Japan that you can't do here or wouldn't do here. In other words, if you want to get your spot across, there's a way to do it. And obviously, I figured that out in Japan, pretty quickly.
In the ring, you're talking about.
Yeah,
there's
in
a
the
way
ring.
to say
In
it
the ring. And
Can you
so,
say it in English, or you need to speak Japanese?
Well, I told him obviously he's going to have to learn pidgin Japanese because you have to use phrases,
Tell me one.
Jesus.
Anyone.
Choto, basically is short. So if you were going to clothesline someone, you would either you would use choto or not in terms of short clothesline or
I see.
something like that. Mm-hmm. So you'd have to learn some words, which and I gave him a list of words. But we had this great conversation, and then to hear that shortly after that, his dad was going over there with him for the first. And I thought, God, what a great opportunity for you, to spend that time with your dad. And then some of these things I'd been telling him, that I started thinking to myself, well, God, Rick's probably told you these things. And, who more qualified than Ric Flair? I mean, I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of good wrestlers out there, but certainly he would get a lot of votes for being the best ever, right, by some people.
Yeah, by a lot of people, yeah.
Yeah.
Now, you went back, you mentioned you look for a young wrestler to be somewhat politically aware of where he is in the company and what he's asked to do. Now, you're sitting here watching Ric Flair return to the company and strap an NWA belt on someone else when you're sitting there with the WCW title. You have a problem with that?
You know what? In other words, if I knew what I knew now, and if you've heard this, just in terms of politics, what I could have accomplished if I understood the wrestling game from a politic standpoint, like I know it now, going back to that debut in the WCW, having won a few world titles over in Japan. Wow, what a weapon I could, what a formidable opponent I would have been, in and out of the ring.
But even then, though, you said you were a Leon White that might use a couple of words.
Yeah,
did you use those words to Rick?
That was, I think that was more of just being big and strong and just asserting my physical will, but being able to do it from a knowledgeable standpoint would have been a different thing. But you know what? There was a lot of things done that, like, let me give you two examples. The Foley feud, it was the hottest thing in wrestling, and people just weren't buying it. They were loving it, and Mick got amnesia. I mean, wow. How do you justify Mick Foley getting amnesia and letting that feud go? Because it was just that's what they wanted to see.
Yeah.
I mean, we were talking about Cactus Jack in his prime, me in my prime, and
this is when they do the vignette where he's wandering around and they're trying to find him and they're shooting those things.
Yeah, and then let's see. Oh God, there was one other thing that just was so obvious. I
was it
apologize.
personal, Leon? Like, then why, from a business standpoint, put out a fire like that?
I don't know. Rick and I, we would talk back then. I've reached out to him, and in his time of need now, and I've got on my hands and knees and prayed, for his son, and So, you know, what was going on then, in other words, people change. You know, people have that ability to move on and forward. But it just, there were certain things that just were done that wasn't necessarily done for the good of the company.
Understood.
You know, yeah.
Now, when he comes back from WWF at this time, does he walk right in like he owns the joint?
Again, Rick was, in terms of politically intelligent and savvy, I mean, he was the best. The unique thing that Steve and I could do was talk very little before the match. And I think a coaching philosophy today, and this has killed Japan in my opinion. I went over to Japan for Mucha not too long ago in late 2012, and their, you know, the art of creativity, the art of the ability to create on the move. How do you say this? In other words,
Improvise.
You can improvise in such a way that creates passion on the move. Just plain and simple. And when it's scripted to a point where you're scripting, you know, duck, block, duck, block, you get my point, and then frown, and you're scripting frowns, and
Is that how it is over there now?
that's how it is everywhere. And it's in the translation of that, you lose with the sport you speak, which was entertaining.
But you and Sting didn't have to do that. Very little discussion.
Very little. And
Even
see,
with a strap match, though?
Yeah, even with the strap match.
Okay.
Even with the strap match, we were just, and it just wasn't with me and Sting. It was, you know, me and, in other words, there were certain things I wouldn't do. I mean, I would have a understanding on a short beginning, and obviously you have that major spot where you call it a switch spot, and that's where the tide turns and you start telling a different story, and slowly that story, either slowly or quickly depending on what kind of type of story you want to tell, changes, and then you have a finish, and then, you know, but everything in between, you know, I created in the ring and on the fly, and you get used to working that way, and then you know, take a few years off, and because I'm ill or I'm whatever I'm doing, and then you come back and people hand you pieces of paper and go, well, here, memorize this. What? And you're doing what? I mean, that's not the way Harley Race did it. That's not the way, you know, we did it when we started out. And you can see, I mean, you can physically not just see but feel the difference.
Are you calling the matches with Steve?
Yeah, pretty much. And believe me, Steve contributed, you know.
Okay, well that's good.
Quite
to
a
know.
bit. No, but in our era, Steve and I, he believed, he trusted me. Inoki did. Heck, Inoki, my second week in town over in Tokyo, I was calling Inoki's matches.
Wow.
And I thought that was quite an honor. And
You mentioned getting your ear cut from Steve's gig, right?
Yeah.
Should you not hide it in your finger? I mean, it would seem to be a basic for me that I probably wouldn't put it there.
Yeah, but you got to know Steve. I mean, Steve was my friend, and there was no intent, you know.
Oh no! But just from an accident, I could cut your balls picking you up for a body slam if I had it there, right? I mean.
Well, no, it just heat of the moment, and you forget to do something for 10 seconds, and then it's, oh my God, but you know, that's 10 seconds.
Where did you keep your gig?
Well, there's no one place to do it.
So you use just a different tights or.
Yeah, and sometimes we just did it the hard way too.
Well, that's, yeah.
You would have a scab or something, and just hit it real hard, and it would work. So.
Iron Sheik told me he used to keep it in his mouth. How fucking crazy is that?
That's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's pretty crazy. I like the Sheik, by the way.
Who doesn't?
He's
phenomenal.
he's phenomenal.
That's
He really
Eric's
is.
foster son. Or maybe it's the reverse, I guess, with age. Kaz is probably your dad.
For me personally, it was huge. Jim was a friend, a big supporter of Vader, and you listen to a Jim Ross narrated Vader match. Wow, I mean he liked the character. He, you know, the announcer has a lot to do with what happens more than you would. The average fan would think or know, and I mean I remember listening to matches after Jim. What's missing? It's like am I not doing as well as and it was Jim and the superlatives, the adjectives,
His demotion comes, maybe not so coincidentally, at the time where there's a change in power.
Mm-hmm.
And Ole is here, and Eric Bischoff has now risen the ranks. Am I wrong to say that this was maybe their decision?
I wouldn't have any idea, but I think, obviously, I think the company was moving in a different direction, and Jim with the cowboy hat and the that type of announcer was, in other words, they were going into the Hollywood Hogan era. Going back, you said there were some things that being done that, like the Mick Foley feud with Vader.
Mm-hmm.
Vader Mick Foley feud was kind of just dismissed,
Mm-hmm.
and it was the hottest thing in wrestling. The other thing was, in my prime and Steve Austin in his prime, we were teamed up together as a tag team, and we wrestled Flair and Arn Anderson about 27 minutes on TV, and just the four of us together, I mean, just tore the house down. Steve and I, as a tag team, wow. I mean, it was just, and Steve and I looked at each other and just, I mean, Steve, have you ever felt anything like that? I mean, did you ever gel with a partner like that? And it was, wow, we need to do something about this. And we both tried, and didn't happen. So, like the Foley feud that had just been diminished, they had a direction and a purpose for what they were doing. So,
Was Pillman an appropriate tag partner for Steve?
obviously, they did well. Was it the absolute best choice? Probably not. But obviously, Steve. It's very easy to say Steve had talent. And he didn't have talent. He had very, very special talent. I know he's a WWE Hall of Famer. I mean, that pretty much says it all, doesn't it? He's if he's worthy to get into that club, good wrestler. I know that when he lost his arm, did some nerve damage to one arm.
Yeah.
I believe that slowed him down. Although he worked very hard to keep the rest of his body in shape.
Is this as significant to you guys in the locker room as it was from a business standpoint? Putting your stamp on enemy territory.
No, it just again, that was a suit and tie thing, and that was a battle of the execs. When you're on the road 300 days a year, 250 days a year, it's just another show. Hey, let me get out of here. let me go home for 2 days and then have a cold beer and take a shower and get back on the road. It really, it just didn't matter. To give myself credit in terms of not being a sadistic bleep, you know, Mick would come. For example, Mick walked up to Harley and I and said that he has an idea. And oh, here we go. And Leon, don't wear your gloves. Just put some tape on your wrist. Don't wear your gloves. And you know, when you hit me, twist it and cut me, and then do it over here, and you know, puff my nose and cut my forehead up, and I'll feed over to Harley, and then Harley can do it. And, you know, and if you know anything about Harley Race, Harley's got this. Wow, he has a steel hand.
Yes.
Literally.
Yes.
He's got these big, giant fingers and knuckles that would, you know, really would hurt if he hit you with it, and. This is what Mick wanted, the power bomb on the cement, power bombing on the cement. The thing on the, you'll see in his DVD, Mick Foley like you've never seen him before. He jumps on my back and I'm bleeding, and you know, I've got a hold of him and he's got a hold of my neck, and he choke slammed me, and you know, we took 2 steps forward and I put my left foot down, threw my right leg up, jumped up in the air and smashed him with 400 pounds onto the, And the ring has, you know, everyone thinks this ring has all this give. It has really no give. It's just, it still supports with, you know, an inch plywood with an inch of rubber with a hard, you know, hard canvas over it. And then the rampway has absolutely no give. It's worse. So I did that to him on the ramp. And then for the record, he's asking you to do this to him. So, a lot of the stuff that was done to him, this was Mick's. In other words, he knew which direction his career was going and wanted this to happen to him.
But now, if I'm Office, I'm going to grab you guys and say, listen, we got a whole thing planned here. I need you to healthy. Please calm down. Does anyone say that to you?
No one says it to him. But obviously, you know, I'm not saying they didn't have concern for Mick, but again, you have a guy that this was his plan to get into the Hall of Fame and make a lot of money, which he has. But
now, is there a concern for television because of the blood and the violence? Does anyone say?
The only match that I'm aware of is that they canceled because of the blood. Was that match where, you know, I was told not to wear my gloves so I could cut him. He, you know, he was pretty good at it. Fifi certainly didn't hurt.
Where'd she come from?
I have no idea. But Flair and me on that set didn't work. It just, my character was, you know, this madman, growling, grunting, kind of caveman type guy. And I think, you know, in retrospect, looking back, some of that I could have toned down a little bit and probably got more response out of the Vader camera, out of the Vader character off camera. And I had Hardy for that, but that just, I mean, it was just, Rick couldn't do anything with me. You know, it's just, so looking back on that, I'd have to take that one on my shoulders. If I had, you know, slowed that down a little bit and
gotcha.
Just gave him a little room to work there. You know, it's hard to interview a grunt and a growl, and you know, by the way, I'm going to beat you up tomorrow. I mean, so I didn't give Rick much room to work there.
Does WCW management give you any problems, A, for taking high-profile bookings outside the company, B, for doing this dangerous kind of fighting?
Well, the danger they didn't like, but they didn't have a choice. It was just, it was part of my contract. The thing that I had negotiated with Bischoff was 5 years, X amount of dollars, and the ability to go to Japan X amount of times. So that was my right, and I was exercising it. It was a good deal. I mean, because being the WCW World Champion, I could negotiate a pretty good rate going back over for Nokia or whomever, and I could work for any of the companies over there. So they obviously wanted those rights back, and eventually I restructured the deal for more money and more years to
not go to Japan.
Well, yeah, to give them those rights, and then that gave them, our television then became more valuable because it included me.
Right.
So.
Now from a performer's standpoint, you're in charge of the Vader character here, and you want as much longevity as possible. Are you worried about participating in a shoot fight and your health and whatnot as WCW champion and cutting your run short in America?
You're always worried about that, but I just, at the time, I was pretty confident, in my abilities and the strength and the ability to move. The only guy that scared me was Victor Hashimikov. He's a two-time legit gold medalist from Russia, and 6'1", 340 pounds, and just, I don't care. I was really in the best shape of my career, and however tall I was, legit height, probably right around 6'4", and 415. I had trimmed down for that, trimmed down to a 415, and he just, the power this guy possessed. I was all about push. I could probably knock that wall over. That door over there, pushing it, exploding, but he could pull it. He could pull it off its hinges, and that difference, the pull and then get to your side. So he scared me.
Is it initially a huge payday that is the lure for you to shoot fight, or do you legitimately want to?
No, didn't want to then. It was a payday.
Okay.
I was involved in a shopping center. And the pay requirements were really, really hefty.
You were building a shopping center?
Yeah.
Okay.
I had bought some property and was developing it. The PUD, the planned unit development, all the architectural drawings, was about a $400,000 bill just by itself.
Was it significant to you as a modern day participant to be amongst the company of those guys, or again, is it just another 300 days on the road and another payday?
Yeah, you have to say that. It just became, at one point, just became one big blur. You're doing 275 days. You want to be home in front of your TV, and you want to spend a little time with your son that's growing up. But no, that's always special to be around those guys that started it, that contributed along the way.
Were any of those guys fans of yours that would come up that you didn't expect someone to say, "Listen, I really think you're great"?
Yes and no. Some of them, I did a lot of barking and fighting, where, the era before me now was, they were technicians, and so I got respect for getting over and being able to do what I did physically for, a big man, and the strength and the ability to move from point A to B quickly and deliver a blow. Like I told you, I feel the definition of power, pure power, is the ability to move from point A to B and deliver a blow. Where these guys were, they were technicians, and so there was some.
So some of them didn't get it, maybe.
Well, yeah, some of them didn't get the character. I was who I was, and I was paying the bills, and I think I did a pretty good job at that.
You recall what happened between Tully and WCW, that Tully didn't want to be a part of it, was fired, wasn't let be a part of it, or whatever?
No, and again, that being a Flair thing, and that camp was clearly divided. There was
friction.
Well, there was Sting and his group, and there was Ron Simmons.
Oh, I see.
And then there was
The
Tully,
Flair
and then
guys.
definitely that whole group where Flair and Tully and the Horsemen, Arn, Anderson. And,
So you weren't privy to a lot of stuff that was going on in
Yeah.
that clique.
yeah, and they, to be honest with you, they were pretty much running the company.
Why Paul Roma?
Was he a friend of one of those guys? I don't know.
Would have to have been, I guess, right?
Buddy, you're digging really. I mean, that's a good question because I would not know how to answer that.
Question a lot of people have. Right?
Sid, again, like I said, he was offered the Vader gimmick, and offered or was considered. I don't really know the case, and I guess I don't care at this point. But and then they talked to him. Well, we have this helmet, and we want to give it to you. We're going to pay you a lot of money to wear it, and some of the marketing things, and then they saw him wrestle, and Sid is a very good wrestler in America, and look is just tremendous. I mean, the muscularity, good athleticism in my opinion, but to be able to move, the first thing you'd have to say is, well, he's legit, what, 6'7"?
Very tall.
Yeah, I mean, legitimate 6'7", and a little stiff, at the hips, and you're talking about a 6 foot, let's just say Ricky Choshu, just could hit the ropes, go back and forth across the ring 3 times before most people could turn around and even attempt to throw a clothesline where he could even duck it. I mean, they're just gone.
What were his biggest limitations?
Who?
Sid.
I wouldn't comment on his limitations, but what I'm the analogy in terms of who he was being asked to wrestle, and that obviously just wasn't, his crew. He could definitely go there and have a squash match where, he could take a smaller guy and powerbomb and choke slam and do all that. But to actually, get in there and do 23 minutes and work and have that real match that I was talking about earlier with the smaller guy, you have to move. You have to get down on their level and move, move for move, step for step. And actually, even though you're taller, you have to lower your level and get eye to eye. Flair was getting paid good money, especially at that point. I know when Hogan came and then that crew, Randy came, and that crew came in, a definite shift from Ron and Foley and myself, and they were trying to clear money. They were trying to clear money off the board so they could, So I don't know if Rick had a problem with it. I know he was making a lot of money, and
Maybe if it was good for the company, it was okay, even if he had to kind of take one for the team?
well, I think so, because Rick's obviously a consummate pro, and the company was moving forward pretty fast, and I think the last thing that you wanted to be at that point was a problem, and you would find some way to get Sid down the road. You know what? Kevin's obviously proven himself as a future Hall of Famer, and this is he's made a tremendous amount of money. But to leave at that time, who who he was in the WCW at that time,
Right.
And then who he was when he came back. So Kevin is a very smart man, and obviously that was, God, I mean, you talk about the ultimate, and they say it's a big believer in timing, and for him to go away and then get involved with Sean as the bodyguard and be part of the clique and become a major player in the business and then come back. Mm-hmm. Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, Kevin's a friend of mine, and I like to think early on he would come to me and ask for suggestions and just basic questions on formula. I mean, is there a formula to have a good match and then versus a bad match? And he's somebody I consider a good friend, and he's done very, very well.
Yes. Well, we're
from all kinds of standpoints.
We love Kevin too, and he could probably teach a collegiate master class on wrestling politics, couldn't he?
Yes. That was perfectly timed, by the way. You know what? I think that was probably Eric Bischoff.
Okay.
Yeah, and the thing that I liked about it was, you needed, you had a extremely strong card underneath that. I mean, you were talking about Flair and Barry Windham. I mean, that card underneath that main event, was as good as it gets in the industry. But Sting and Davey Boy were both, even though Davey Boy was a little shorter than me and quite a bit shorter than Sid, was certainly very, he was not just strong, he was extremely strong, and fit in very well. I mean, Davey Boy could stand and suplex me and hold me. I mean, and just hold me and hold me and hold me. So as far as the matchup, physically it was a great matchup.
What about your pairing with Sid?
That's what I was just getting to. We both, I think, were trying to out-monster each other. One of us needed to calm down and talk.
Right.
It's just that, and I look back on some of those tapes, and it's just like, wow. I mean, neither one of us were giving. It was like I would do this crazy-eyed look and growl, and then he would do it, and I would do it, and it was like, well, someone's got to actually say something that sounds like a word.
Would have been nice if somebody on the other side of the camera was adept enough to come up and say, Leon, you got to take the lead here and be the talker a little bit.
Yeah, in other words,
didn't happen.
It would have. Sid could have. He did what he did is, in the, that grimace growl, and if somebody just would have stepped back and just did a little talking, that could have really been a significant team. But it was just too much male testosterone.
Right.
Too much.
Had you guys known him from boxing?
I certainly had. And I thought, why? I finally made the big time. Michael Buffer was. Could you imagine the? And I don't know. I shouldn't say anything. I don't know if the guy was married or what, but he
was popular.
Good-looking guy. I mean, and talking and suit and ties on. So he probably did pretty well, but it was with the ladies and stuff like that. But he had that. But that was the phrase was his, right? Let's get rid
of Rumble. Sure. Yeah.
Didn't he coin that?
Was he a wrestling fan? Is that how this whole thing happened?
I don't know, but I don't think it mattered. I know he got paid.
Yeah.
I bet he became one. I bet he became one pretty quick.
How was he with you guys? Was he respectful or stay out of the way? What did he do?
Yeah, he just, I think he was kind of like, these guys, are kind of crazy. He was more of a, leery would be a good word. Leery.
got a guy biting someone's ear off in the ring.
Yeah,
Mike Tyson,
yeah.
Holyfield, and these guys are crazy.
Might have been out of his element.
Break.
You know.
A lot of people blamed the low rate on the Pillman and Austin main event. Why?
Well,
Does blame always go to the main event?
you know, it's you know, Flair as a booker, he was the booker at that time, right? Yeah, and for me, it's like, why didn't we continue on with the Cactus Jack thing? Because from a rating standpoint, you know, Cactus Jack and myself people were interested in that feud. That we could have built that another 6 weeks and probably really did something with it in terms of a number, because that's what we were doing. We were trying to break that magic number, that 1-0, because we were doing those 9-3s and 9-4s, .93s and 9-4s, which was a respectable number for that group at that time. But you know, we weren't popping that 1.8 or that 2, the number that really would have made some money and impressed people. That might have done it. You know, the Stone Cold Steve Austin Vader. I mean, Steve and I looked at each other and said, you know, it'll never happen. We're done. We knew. In other words, it was too good. It was too good a tag team, too good a tag match. I mean, we took Arn, Anderson, and Ric Flair, 26 minutes, and obviously Arn Anderson is not just a good hand, was a great hand, and Ric Flair, like we said, is arguably one of the best wrestlers ever to step in the ring, and then you have, you know, me in that position, and so cold. I mean, wow, what a tag match! I mean, what a match this was. So why wouldn't you try that again? Why wouldn't you just for the heck of it, put me and Steve again and try it?
Now, because you're shooting for many months in advance, there are title changes revealed to the live audience because people are coming out with straps that don't have straps when it's being taped.
Well, you know, I think I understand where you're going. Obviously, from a logistics standpoint, you're right. I mean, they have a belt that they haven't won, and what if they get injured? So you've crowned a champion, and he's not even in the picture when he's supposed to be the champion. So I mean, that's a pretty big deal.
Yes.
And again, you don't even know. Aside from a physical standpoint, I mean, someone's contract could physically run out during that period, and what do you do? So obviously, they felt it was worth it simply because of the economy, the scales. Right. You fly everyone down, everyone to one group. You get so much done. You save so much money, and it comes down to just. I mean, it's all about the dollar. You know what? The other thing was the crowds weren't wrestling crowds. And so I think that's something that we failed to do, to fail to recognize that the fact that the crowds weren't wrestling, so we needed to do was change our format a little bit, entertain for that crowd, and we didn't do it. In other words, you know, all the complicated wrestling angles and this and that, basically you simplify it and entertain that crowd, get the cheers, get the crowd noise, and then move on, and you know, get down the road in the shows and get back to wrestling.
If I were walking backstage at the Disney MGM studios when you were doing these tapings in front of tourists who were coming to see Mickey Mouse, would I hear the boys backstage say things like, Jesus, Eric, there's nothing going on out there. We can't do this again. Was it something you guys were realizing pretty quickly?
WCW in that era, you know what, something, I still wrestle today, you know, not very much physically, but I get such a thrill from it. I mean, and I'm not here trying to pat myself on the back. It's like football was with me. I just loved football. Probably, should have became an instructor in some way, either in wrestling or in football. I enjoy it. I enjoy the instruction part of it. I enjoy being in front of a crowd. So for me, that wasn't important. For me, it was just the actual the act of being in front of the people, getting that feeling, that high. And for me, it was a high, and that's why I still do it today. And you can, from where I was physically 10 years ago to where I am today, I'm probably in better condition. And, I've certainly, my face has gotten older, but I've quit drinking. I've done a lot of things in my life that I used to do. The person that we're talking to today is a different guy than when was our last interview?
4 years ago.
Yeah, even and during that period, I mean, I've changed substantially. But that desire and that the fun, the fun is actually stronger if anything.
And ladies, he's single now, so send your requests to us. We'll forward the photos to him.
My girl dumped me. Which was the what? What was it?
It's actually the first by a 400-pounder super heavyweight moonsault
ever
and
in the history of professional wrestling.
And
like ever
actually,
in the world.
You did it twice this match. You do one where he rolls out, right, and then you hit him a second time. So you actually did the two moonsaults.
That's right.
Why do you decide to try it?
Well, I had a trampoline that I had dug. You get a backhoe and you dig it down so it's level with the ground in my backyard. And I had done that for myself to stay in shape and do stuff like that. And I'd done it for my son. It was an athletic thing to do, have a trampoline in your backyard. So my son was bouncing. It's very healthy. It just was a ball. So I'm bouncing on this thing with my son, and where your son is smaller, and with my weight, he would, and we padded all around. So even if you missed the mat, you would still, be relatively safe. But, I would land just before him, and he would, 25 feet in the air, that type of thing. And I said, you know what, I could probably, I just got the notion one day I was seeing, I think I saw Shawn Michaels moonsault, and Shawn threw a pretty good one. And I said, God, I think I could do that. That'd really be something. No one's ever done it before. And so I just tried it, and the first time landed right on my feet. And I said, I could do this. Now, obviously, you're on the ring, and the rope is what, 5.5 feet from the top. So you're going from the ground, so you're 5.5, and so your feet are at 10 feet in the air. So it's like you're standing on a basketball rim. And then you're approximately 6 feet tall, a little more. But your head is 16 feet in the air, looking down into the crowd, 16 feet. And then you have to do a flip backward onto somebody without killing him. And it really is. You think of that. That's hard to do. To do it's one thing, but to do it without killing someone is another thing.
You obviously have to try this a few times before you do it the first time.
No.
Are you putting anyone there to take a blow?
Just did it. What I did was had a blank canvas, and Davey Boy, who Davey Boy and I were good friends. He ribbed everybody, but he really enjoyed ribbing me for some reason. I mean, it would cost you real money. You know what I'm saying? Your bags and oh my God, Davey Boy.
Could you take a rib? Or did you get really angry?
Well, you had to, because if you really got angry, then they'd do it again, and do it again, and do it again. So you'd have to just kind of, Davey, one of these days I'm really gonna hurt you, So you just quietly walk away, and then find a knife and cut your bag up and just move on. Because if you made a point, boy, next day it'd happen again. Yeah. He didn't care. He he would take the whipping just to just to do it again.
Right.
You know, it was just great about him. But you know, in his way, in that British accent, he says, "Well, you know, can you do it?" And so I went out and did one for him, and he just kind of had his hands folded and went, "Okay," and walked away, and that was it. And then we did it. So
You told Ole to fuck off, and then you did it.
well, you know, Ole, yeah, we were around the board, and Ole got very upset that I was going to do it, and I did still to this date. Ole and I had always gone along. Ole's a good guy, smart guy about wrestling, but he did not want me to do that moonsault. And finally, I think I said, you know, knowing me in that day, you know, and this was before, by the way, that Terrell Owens did it. I said, get a bag of popcorn and tune in, because I'm going to do it.
Right.
Yeah, so.
Do you remember the locker room? Did you get a pop when you came back after the match from the other boys? Or?
Yeah, because it was perfect.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just a perfect one. Yeah, it was like wow.
Were you invited to the wedding?
No.
Okay.
And you know, no disrespect to Dustin. Dustin and I are good friends, and we've always been good friends. He's a little younger than me, but boy, some of the matches we've had with him as a young kid, as a cowboy. I mean, there's another one. Those are a legitimate feud between me and Dustin that I could, you know, Vader and Ron Simmons, and Vader and Sting, and Vader and Dustin, and Vader and Sid Vicious, and I mean Vader and all the Japanese, and Vader and Shawn Michaels, and you know, if I would have had any sense, I would have obtained the rights to all those videos, and
If you could have, that would have been a good move.
Vader and anybody would have been probably a pretty good seller.
Marrying within the business.
Bad
I
move.
can't imagine that ever working well.
Just, yeah, the absolute craziest thing I've ever heard of, yeah. I mean, a wrestler being married, period. I mean, I'm divorced and not with my wife, and couldn't even imagine being involved in wrestling.
They were probably nice and quiet and respectful in the locker room, eh? Everything I hear says they were choir boys in the locker room.
Wow.
Do you like the Nasties?
You know, I always got along with them. Brian and
Jerry, yeah.
yeah, you know what? Pretty good tag team. And had they been in shape, I mean, you talk about they're probably didn't spend a lot of time in the gym, and certainly, you know, had their share of cold beers in the evenings, but did a good job in the ring. I mean, played their role well, and were believable.
No one you ever, neither of them, anyone you ever had personal issues with?
No.
Okay.
No, neither one of them. They were a little younger, you know, coming up in the AWA, so just you know, Brian has done quite well, really, hasn't he? I mean, he was on the reality show with Hulk and the Miz.
Yeah,
show.
he's a friend of Hogan's, and
Brian is somebody that has a big heart. He's just, you know, a guy that he would give you the shirt off his back.
well, that's good to hear.
Both of them and I got along good. And, you know, my background, I grew up in inner city LA, and you know, my neighbors were Hispanic and black, and I played with certainly black young men, young boys as football players in that league out there is called Pop Warner, and like I said, we played a rough form of little league. Basically, Pop Warner football is a little league, and simply because, you know, you have a brother that's a couple years younger, and you just use his birth certificate. that made it tough. These guys were awfully big and awfully fast for 8 years old.
Had you any inkling then that Booker could go on to become the superstar that he did as a solo?
Booker is good and very good. His in-ring performance is excellent. I think what he did when he got out from under that, you know, the same types of things that I've been trying to explain, like, you know, why wouldn't you know, Stone Cold and I get together and just tear the house down for 30 minutes? Why wouldn't you try that again? Or why wouldn't you finish out the Mick Foley feud with me? When you got out from under there, he blossomed as not only as a talent, but then he became his own personality. So, and he's now a Hall of Famer because of it. So,
I mentioned Sid proposing this thing with the shackles and stuff. Was Sid a member of a booking committee of some kind? Did he have any creative input at the time?
I don't think so. I just think that was something that he took upon himself, and and Eric was entertaining his thoughts, so his ideas.
But probably very wise to nix it before it got to TV.
Yeah, that might have been the understatement of the year.
Are you guys back then, I mean, now it's a ratings-driven business, but back then in '93, are you guys aware of a rating?
Yeah, sure. We're aware of the buy rate and, you know, the television rating and who's doing what, and, you know, obviously vying for that spot. Again, my learning curve as, you know, a politically intelligent or savvy wrestler, you know, was really slow coming. So, you know, and something I needed to know was a real I think it was a real negative, you know, not playing that game. I was more of the rah-rah, the football player, let's win one for the Gipper type thing, and this really wasn't about that. It was you know, it was a pack of wolves trying to feed themselves.
Let's just take live TV, build up, you're creating and introducing a monster heel, and this happens. What can you do?
You eat it, don't you? I mean, you can't do anything. It's over. Yeah, I mean, that's pretty bad. I feel, wow.
As the boys who are standing to the side, like Flair and Sid was out there, should you go over and start putting the boots to him? Because you can't act scared of the guy anymore. Can you save it as the victim in any way?
I don't know. I just think
go to commercial? Well, that was pay-per-view. Can't go to commercial.
It's just shock and awe. And I mean, it's like a train accident. You can't stop watching it. So that's too bad. I don't really remember the type of talent he had. I don't know if it was just a gimmick that would have done anything anyways, but obviously he did get his chance, and that's the bad thing.
Is that thing as significant here as it was the paint, the Mad Max type of thing? Should they have updated a little bit? Can a gimmick be passed by an era?
I see what you're saying. That's interesting. You know, what they were was their physical presence. In other words, when they first became the Road Warriors, and, you know, the big arms, the big chest, no one looked like that. And that was their deal. They were the first ones. wow, I mean, they were big and strong legitimately. And they were big and strong and mean legitimately, and the look with the paint, and nobody looked like that. I mean, even the guys that spent time in the gym didn't look like that. I mean, they were built for power, and so, yeah, it's a good question. Good
I'm just thinking because here by '93
I
we've
don't know
seen
what
Sting with
I don't
paint.
know. I don't know what you do though, because I don't think it was the paint. I think the paint is still okay. It just the everyone had matured physically to where they were, and so
Gotcha.
I don't know what to. But it's a good question, and I think that time off, our time away, may have hurt, but they had such a great career for such a long time. My God.
We talked before about the belt. Here's the WCW champion, and now here's somebody who's called the World Heavyweight Champion. Is this to assume that you are not a World Heavyweight Champion? You're almost shitting on your champ.
You know what? That I have to go back to. Just say that my political awareness.
Yeah.
Just, I was getting paid a very handsome paycheck, and I had the ability to go to Japan and make more money, and had it pretty good.
Yes.
But the knowledge would have been helpful, and
Just from their standpoint, even not even just talking about you, you're one would think running a wrestling federation, I should be doing everything I can to elevate
You
the
would
champion
think.
that has my 3 letters on their belt.
yeah, you would think that, but they did a lot of things that weren't, to look back on that time and to see, well, who was running what at what time and what was being done is certainly interesting. And then, why didn't this happen and why didn't this happen? Because it was just so obvious. And then, for you to say, you have the most dominant, at the time I would think me in my prime in any one of those WCW title reigns would have been considered, the most dominant world champion in wrestling, sports, entertainment. And so why wouldn't you want to make that the, and then somehow do the NWA on a different level? But in spite of everything that they did wrong, they made a pretty good run of it for a long time. Didn't
They did. They
I mean,
did.
you have to say that. You have to acknowledge that Eric Bischoff, obviously him and I had troubles and didn't see eye to eye on a few things. But as many mistakes as he made, I mean, he obviously, in the same breath, was very successful. And now
that
nobody cares. I use Big Van Vader. Nobody
Oh,
cares.
is that true? Yeah.
Yeah, nobody cares. It's just, what had happened was when I went over, I was working for WCW as Big Van Vader. And by the way, Inoki had given me the name and given me the helmet, which became my intellectual property legally. And then Inoki was still doing business and was upset at me because I had left. In other words, I was the defending World Tag Team Tournament champion with Fujinami. And Fujinami was a good friend of mine. Noki was a good friend of mine. And that's the way you did business over there. You were friends. Noki would two things for me that I'm told was never done. He paid me a great deal of money on a weekly basis. He would, in certain towns, he would just have little surprises to come to my hotel where female masseuses would come to my room and of course, give legitimate saying this into the camera, massages, hours and hours, feet massages and rubs, and they would, they bathe you, and, just things like that, things that would happen, because for a period of 2 or 3 years there running, we were sold out every night, and I was the main event every night so he did things, and so, that friendship, which, I don't necessarily feel good about it, but in the same breath, it was business to me, because we were drawing houses, and I didn't ask you to do those things, but we got to the point where I had injured my knee, and literally my left knee, I went and showed Inoki. I said, look, my doctor has told me, and I did this probably about 2 weeks before the tag team tournament, and I would straighten my knee, and a piece of bone would flip and click up. I mean, it just click, and it would pop up and down, and it was very painful, and it was wearing wrong. And the doctor said, look, Leon, you can wrap that up and tape it up, but you're going to destroy your knee. I mean, you have to get this fixed. I mean, is it painful? Yes. Take a lot of pain pills? Yes. And so they want you to work one more tournament, and then they want you to work another tournament, and then they want you to come back and do this all-important tag tournament with Fujinami to defend the title, because we were going to win it again, for the second year running. Fujinami and I were, like I said, good friends and good, a good partner. We gelled good in the ring, and so I said no. I just said, look, I got to have this done. I had a doctor up in Vail who was probably not as well known at this point as Andrews is in Alabama, but the guy in Vail was very good, and obviously he's closer for me, so I was going up to Vail and getting it done, and I could not believe that they didn't see this. I mean, I took Fujinami's hand, and I took Inoki's hand and said, feel. And oh God, they were shocked, but yet they wanted me to not just wrestle a match, but we're talking about
3 dates, it sounds like, right?
Well, we're talking about a 2-week tour, a 3-week tour, and then a 2-week tour. So we're talking about, and so I said, no, guys, no, I'm sorry. And I had an opportunity where, at any point that I wanted to, I could have went to the WCW, and for good money, very good money, and I hated to sever that tie because I basically had the best of both worlds, but I made that decision, and so then as a WCW, who had the helmet and the name because he had given it to me, and the first thing I did, of course, when I left was, to make sure I thanked him legally from my attorney for the helmet and the name, just to remind him that it was mine, and nothing was said. And then when I came back for the shoot fighting tournament, now they were upset, and so I went in to a Japanese court of law, which is basically a room about half the size and a table and 2 arbitrators and yourself and them. That's it. And to me, I think it's genius because we spend millions in just this girl that stabbed her boyfriend in the neck and shot him.
Yeah.
I mean, she's a superstar, right? She's on TV, and she's cost how many millions of dollars? Cost me and you. We're paying this tab. Right. So that's how they do it. They get 2 guys in suits and ties, and you just hash it out.
Yeah.
You just say, well, this is my side of the story. This is my side of the story. The 2 guys get together and talk for 5 minutes, and they make a decision. Period.
So the lawsuit probably had more to do with not doing that tournament.
No lawsuit. It was just a decision.
Well, them making you come to even fight it out was...
Yeah, but
because
what they said was, you know what? My point was I brought pictures. Big man they can have. Vader, they don't own. They didn't create it. This guy did.
Right.
Star Wars. He has a right. If he was sitting here and they said, can't argue with that, you're Vader, so we called me Super Vader, and that was it.
Right.
And you know what? It didn't have a bleeping thing to do with nothing. no one gave a shit. First of all, Rick is a pretty good wrestler. I don't care, and you know, a lot of his stuff is similar from day to day. But whose isn't? I mean, Rick's a pretty good wrestler, and that's not fair criticism. Brett's a pretty good wrestler also, but he's not the best there was, the best there is, the best there ever will be. I mean, there's a lot, but you know, Brett is. I would say, as you know, someone I look Brett in the eye and I consider him a friend. I mean, to say he's the excellence of execution, I mean, he's extremely good. But you know, it gets a little heavy-handed to say the best there was.
Of course.
You know.
But is this a company guy defending his company? Maybe he doesn't have these personal feelings for Rick, but he's working on top in WWF, and he's got to say something about the enemy.
Well, you know, in my book, and this is a shoot from the hip, man. I heard all these horror stories about Vince McMahon and the company and this and that. You know what? I was through it all. I was never treated in the WWE. Excuse me. I was never treated with anything but respect in the WWE. I was treated like a gentleman, Mr. White this, Mr. White that. I was. Things may have not worked out the best for me during that period of time. So for me to be saying this, you know, I have an opportunity now to say or do anything I want to say. Vince treated me like a gentleman. The people there, all the you know, from the people that get your tickets to the, you know, from the cameramen to, I mean, it's just bar none. It's the best company in the history of the world.
Okay.
Wrestling company, period. So, you know, you can say what you want, you know, about Rick and Brett, but that one company, the WWE, has had a lot to do with both of them being able to say anything.
Does morale start to change in a locker room when this stuff starts to happen?
All right.
The business as a whole is taking a turn here, but I mean, your payoffs are going to be based on the house now still, right? So as houses shrink, there must be tension.
Well, you know, I'm going to shoot with you guys. That's what I'm here to do. You know, I had a contract, period.
Oh.
I got paid the same.
I see.
And my, you know, my pay-per-view money was the same, which was good and bad. And during that era, pay-per-views, you know, we never had that real big one, so I even made out there.
Why do you think it started to turn a little bit in the U.S.? Why does wrestling fall out of favor every so often?
Well, it used to have cycles, and you know, cycles has up and downs. Now, let's face it. I mean, there's one guy that just runs the show.
Right.
But there's really one company, and that's worldwide. I mean, there's nothing in Japan. I mean, the thing that saddens me the most about professional wrestling is the level that Japan has sunk to. I mean, they. I mean, at one point, I mean, you're talking about All Japan and New Japan and Noah and even this shoot group. Like, you know, we're talking about on any given night. I mean, you know, 150,000 people are watching wrestling in Japan. Between Inoki and Baba, and then when Misawa broke off from Baba, and you know, and he's selling out, and then this shoot group, I mean, myself and Nobu, we sold out just this little. You got to understand, this is just some kids off the street. This guys that did the shoot group, and you know, they came over. They flew over to WCW, and walked in the office, and Bill was the deal. And, you know, I had a contract that said I could do what I wanted to. I could sign this contract, and I took care of Bill. I mean, I said, I'm going to make this much. But he said, how much you going to make? He said, well, that means I have to give you some valuable dates off to do this, for you to go back over and go back over. And I said, yeah, and I'm going to take care of you for it. I mean, I paid him.
Wow.
And big money. I mean, it's a lot, you know, $100,000 a match. And said, you know, the beginning matches were 50 and 75,000. And then that match we did in front of the baseball stadium, 44,000 people outside. You know, we fought nearly 30 minutes, Nobu and I, and just tore the house down. And that's hard to do outside, because you lose the contact, okay? So to see where the Japanese wrestling has gone to now, I mean, Noah's about ready to go out of business. All Japan is still doing okay, but it's nothing near. And then you got New Japan that's doing well, but they're doing well on a different level. It's just not the same.
Not the same.
And then really, the only group that's close here is Vince, and you know. We get on a plane, and we're working all week, and then all of a sudden we find ourselves in the lounge, first class lounge in Florida. In the end, you know, I don't know if I should say this or not. I don't know if the entire plane is ours or not, if it's chartered, but we're all dominating. The WCW crew is dominating this lounge, and I hate to forget it. Everyone is drinking. Everybody, agents, everybody, and. Everyone had pills, and everyone's, oh, what do you got? Okay, and there's this massive exchange rate of okay, I'm having a beer. Well, you know, I need a muscle relaxer because my back hurts, and a lot of this is legit. I mean, you know, you work 300 days a year. You're going to sit on a plane for 10 hours. You know, I have to have a pain pill because my back hurts, my knees hurt. And I'm not saying everyone was getting wiped out of their mind, but obviously there's extremes. So one of the individuals, I have to remain nameless, I mean, he gets up, he puts his bandana on, and just does a nosedive into the chair. And this was before the plane ride started, okay? So then we take off, and this plane ride is forever, and you know, we're drinking and on the plane and eating, and then we land, and then there's this 3.5 hour ride in from, I guess it's Heathrow, the airport.
London?
Yeah, into London, and then we're there early, of course, so then there's another 3 hour wait for the show starts, and then there's a 3 hour show, and of course I'm the main event, or maybe I was a semi because Davey Boy, you know, in his town, right? And then we get back on the bus, and then it's five more hours. So, you know, started out at the hours, on top of which we were working. It wasn't like we came fresh from home. We were working that whole week. And finally got to where we were going, and I mean, people are afraid. And we got to where we were going, and, you know, first thing someone did was pounded on the manager's door in this quasi-hotel. It was kind of like more of a house, you know what I'm saying? Had a lot of room, but it had a house type atmosphere. And someone's pounding on his door to open a bar. So he does. You know, hey, these are American wrestlers and we're superstars, right? And he opens a bar, and so now we've got 25 guys that are supposed to be in bed sleeping that are up drinking, and the sun's coming up. And the next thing I know, there's a fight and a ruckus, and Sid basically was going into shock, and he kind of did the Frankenstein walk toward me, and I didn't see what happened. And, you know, I could honestly say I did not see. I heard, and by the time I got there, the ruckus had been over. And so I grabbed him by the hand, and he had blood just squirting out of his, just every time his heart pumped, it just about that far. So we're talking about pretty good pressure. And I didn't know what to do, so I just stuck my thumb in it and told him to sit down. And he did. And someone got a towel, and I just put it around my thumb, but I kept my thumb in there and just talked to him for about, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and the ambulance came, and the guy said, okay, take your thumb out, and he stuck something in there and took him to the hospital. So I can't give you a blow-by-blow because I didn't see it, but...
Are you reprimanded as a group for your behavior in Europe? Does this start some kind of restriction on drinking or anything as a result of this?
You know what? I was actually praised for saving a life. He would have died. I mean, there was that much blood. Like, Leon, quick thinking, good job. You know, so I got one of the few times in my career that I wasn't to blame. I was actually the good guy. So, but I just can't tell you what happened and why it happened. But you know what? That was a result of it. It was legitimately a blood pumper. Well, obviously, you know, Hulk was surrounding himself with his people, and those talks were in the...
Yeah, because this was the end of '93.
Yeah.
They were happening. Hulk was on his way, and Flair just came back, and you know, Mean Gene is not just good; he's very good. And for me, you know, the big loss for me was Jim Ross. Jim Ross was just, in terms of superlative, in terms of a big, powerful world champion, he was perfect for me. And so...
Do you think you'll get some of that back with Gene?
No, I think I did well with Gene, but I'm just saying it was the start of an era change, wasn't it? It was going into the Hollywood...
The Hogan era, you can say, right?
Yeah, I guess.
It really was.
You know, in turn, it went from WCW to the Hogan show. I mean, Hogan, well, I mean, let's face it, Hogan ran that, right?
The concept was the random partner tag
Yeah, and I was
team
supposed to win a
matches?
ring. And Sting got a ring. He won the battle all the time before, and he got this really nice ring. And Eric didn't buy me one.
Oh, really?
Oh, God, I was so upset. I'm serious. I mean, it was a really nice ring.
Once again,
It looked
the
like a
art of
Super Bowl
negotiation needed to be learned.
Yeah.
It should have been on paper beforehand.
You know what? And I'm going to end this and say, you know, I've seen Terry since then, Hulk, being Hulk. And Hulk and we really never had a problem. I obviously got to the point where I was in the way, my contract was in the way of what they were doing and them moving forward. But I've seen Eric since then, and you know, there's just no hard feelings. It's just,
Well, things change over time, I think, and people change too.
you know, Eric. The thing I will comment on this because Eric had said, Leon, I have asked you to take photos for 6 weeks straight. You know, and that's right, that's the truth. And for 6 weeks straight, I found a reason not to go. So in other words, before you went to CNN Center, which is where we did our taping, I was supposed to go over to and do 4 hours of, you know, you take your you know, your uniform and you put the hot stuff on and you put the mask on and you flex and flex and flex. And it's grueling. It was the worst thing ever you had to do. I mean, and then you're exhausted because you flex and pump for 6 hours and then you got to go wrestle 9 times, right, on 9 of those little shows. So Eric said, Leon, you promised me you have to do it. And Eric and I we were okay. We were friends. You know, I had been there and he recognized the fact, you know, he said, Leon, guys are coming in, but I recognize the fact that you know, this whole thing, you and Sting started this whole thing. Without you and Sting, you know, we're not here. We don't do what we're doing right now. And so I'm doing that for him. And then I show up late because I was doing what my boss. See, there was nobody else that was my boss except for Eric. Eric Bischoff was my boss. Said on my paycheck. That, you know, my contract said that Eric Bischoff was my boss. Nobody else. And so I did what my boss told me to do, and I showed up, probably 4 hours late. And you can't be in two places at once. You know, you're told to do, you know, and he even said, Leon, I will physically send a limo to your, you know, and pick you up. No, I got to rent a car, I promise. That's how bad it was. So when I got there, I'm late, and I get mother bleep this, mother bleep this, fat mother bleep that.
From who?
Well, that was the Orndorff thing.
Oh, right.
You're late, and these guys want to take lunch. Couldn't get nothing out. The boss told me I had to go take these pictures. So that's how it started, because I was doing what I was told to do. And that's where I'm going to leave that. And right now, this is a bonus for you guys. Paul, I understand Paul's sick. You know, he's got some problems with his throat.
Okay.
Cancer.
Oh, yeah.
Cancerous type stuff. He's chewed tobacco for a long time. My dad died of prostate cancer, and my mom's battling breast cancer right now. And so it's, you know, my understanding is that he's got some form of throat cancer because of, and my heart goes out to him. I was doing autographs for, God, I don't know who, it doesn't matter. And he just walked up, and, you know, I stood up and took out my hand, and he hugged me. And I hugged him back, and he went, couldn't talk. And so I wanted to say that, you know.
Well, time heals all wounds anyway, right? I mean,
you know, that cost me not a lot of money, but a shitload of money. But, you know, I thought that was a nice story, you know, for.
And when you
had he known that Eric had told me to go do that, because Paul and I were friends. You know, he was an ex-football player. I was an ex-football player. I had just given him a papered Labrador. I mean, this is a $1,100 dog, right? My dog was, you know, and just was one of those locker room deals where, hey, you know, why, you know, in other words, you're a big star and you show up late. So it wasn't the case. I was actually working.
Right.
I was, you know.
Misunderstanding.
And so anyways, I you know what, I'm very proud. I'm a born-again Christian, and I know I'm not supposed to bring religion onto your shoot interview, but I wish him well. I hope he gets through this.
We do too. This is in Flair's hometown. The atmosphere seemed right, probably, if you were going to do this thing, that this is the way you would do it with Rick, going back to Charlotte.
But it got to stop you. The deal was going in. There's always a deal, right? Mm-hmm. Deal is going in. Dusty, the booker. Dusty says 6 weeks later, we're going to do the revenge of Vader in a cage, and you're going to win it back. So you're going to do this for Rick, because, you know, it is his hometown, and, you know, company needs it, and, you know, you're a good guy, Land. You know what? You're a fighting champion, and you're Vader, and, you know, you're my buddy, and or I don't do it, or, you know, and God, it just, the fifth week, Flair took over the booking job, so.
And strangely, he didn't honor that agreement that was made with Dusty. Isn't that strange?
Yeah. So, and you know what? I'm going to see Rick. I don't know when it's going to be out, but I'm going to see him shortly here at a show in Rhode Island. He's going to be there to honor his son, and you know, like I said, I've texted him, and I told you about the story. I told you guys, right? Today?
Yes, about his son.
Yeah, talking to his
Yes.
son. Yeah, so.
You know, you may have closed out the year losing that title, but you were that year named in 3 separate publications: the Wrestler of the Year, Pro Wrestling Illustrated, the Wrestling Observer Newsletter, the Pro Wrestling Torch, all named you the Wrestler of 1993. And here in 2013...
No, and
you were he was, somebody told me, I don't know if this is true, I don't know if this is reliable, he was the first 400-pounder, 400-pound super heavyweight ever to nail a moonsault.
And you know, this is just a question, and please feel no pressure just because I'm sitting next
All right,
to you.
let me see. Go ahead.
Who's the greatest super heavyweight? Super heavyweight, and again, we're not talking about Andre, because you can't compare to Andre, and even Show. You can't compare to Show, right? Because those guys are just different.
You see, my opinion matters.
The greatest.
You guys be the judge.
No, you got to say. You got to answer. I've been
know.
answering questions for you.
I would give that award to anyone who could work with any kind of style. Someone who could work with the smaller high flyers, like
Which
a
I
Shawn
could.
Michaels. Somebody who could work with the big guys.
Inokis.
The Inokis, right? Sure. And
then
someone who could work with the big guys,
Undertakers.
the heavyweights, right?
Canes.
So it would have
Stings.
to be someone who held some.
The Foleys, the
Who
Brawlers.
worked for all the majors, someone who worked overseas. I would want to give that to somebody who was well-rounded like that. But I want you to tell me today, in 2013, if there's a product on the market that I could use to work my upper body, if there's something
Oh my
that,
God,
if,
you're going to do this for me.
if I wanted to
There is.
perfect this physique, what I would be able to do in the coming months.
Well, you know what? You got it. You know what? I'll mention it if you promise to bring me back for another one of these, you know, in a reasonable amount of time.
You're watching he learned negotiation. He said he couldn't negotiate
But now I can.
when he was 25 years old.
You gonna do it?
Yeah, let's go.
So he's got to bring me back when I have the prototype. But I have engineered, designed, and have became patent pending on an exercise device that does the complete upper body, chest, tries, shoulders, back, buys, stomach, literally your chest from the incline to the decline. It's an incredible piece of equipment. It has a variable strength, which means it has interchangeable rods. In other words, if I have a 10-year-old son, we could buy one apparatus and a set of rods for me and a set of rods for him and use it simultaneously.
Change the
simply by
resistance.
interchanging the rods.
Right.
And I'm patent pending in America. It is literally, for me, I've been lifting weights a long time. And at one point was a very good weightlifter, but you know, you strive for one thing, the pump. And right now, it tentatively being called the Vader pump. And I have people interested in Japan, in Colorado, in Florida. It's extremely expensive, so got any bookings, call me. I'm kidding.
It's extremely expensive to buy it?
No, extremely expensive to
To buy in?
no, to become patent pending, to do
Oh, the
prototypes.
process, yes,
The
yes.
process is extremely
process is
expensive.
expensive.
The piece itself is very reasonable, and yes, a gentleman named Eric Simmons is helping me out, and
Oh my God, it's
oh my
over.
goodness,
It's over
you
for
guys,
you.
You guys.
This thing isn't going to be out by the time we air. It's going to be squashed.
Anyways.
You let us know when it's out, and we'll get that next step for you. And I want to thank you for taking this step, a big step back in time.
We did pretty good, didn't we?
We did, and
Does
you
it-
did a lot better in 1993 than I
93
did.
was pretty good.
I was running around in college trying to figure everything out. Thank you for watching.